Hey everyone, welcome to another video, and today we're going to be covering playing from behind. Now, over the past week and a half, I've really been thinking hard about how exactly do I need to structure this video? What exactly do I need to cover to get across the information? Do I need to only talk about mindset? Do I need to only use examples? Do I need to only talk about the specific bits of information? I don't know. So what I decided to do is actually use all of these things. We're going to use specific examples from both a member in our Discord community and Caps. We're also going to be talking a lot about the mindset and mentality, all the problems revolving around that. And we're also going to be covering a lot of different theory about the game specifically and how the whole process works. So sit back, relax, grab a notepad. This is going to be a very in-depth video. So I do suggest that you watch this video potentially multiple times, or even just break up your viewing of this video into different sessions. Maybe watch 10 minutes, then the next 10 minutes, then the next 10 minutes, however you want to do it, because it is very dense. So let's dive straight in, guys. Now you may ask me, Curtis, why are you doing an entire video on playing from behind if your entire philosophy on improvement revolves around focusing on the things that get you ahead? Now, that is true. My entire channel is all about focusing on that first 10-15 minutes of a game, pinpointing exactly what you need to do to replicate getting ahead, rather than reviewing a VOD when you're already behind. Now, that is true, but in order to balance out my channel, show you, okay, what you do if you are in this situation, because League is chaotic by nature. There will be some games where you can't help it, whether you get counterpicked in draft, you have a losing side lane, some unfortunate situation happens, you are just going to be in a sticky situation at one point or another. So I thought it'd be really good to kind of do a video on it regardless, even though this is not where I would suggest you start if you are looking to improve in the first place. So this is not a sexy topic to cover. And what I mean by that is, in order to improve at this skill, you literally need to load up the VOD that you just got solo killed in, you got ganked, you got roamed on, whatever reason you got behind. You got to load up that VOD, you got to sit in your chair, you got to go to that point that you just died, and you got to watch it from that point. But who wants to do that? Isn't it easier just to press play, queue up again, see that little timer, and forget that game ever happened, load up a YouTube video and just move on? It's much easier, right? This is going to hurt the ego, it's going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be a little bit boring. Isn't it easier to look at that solo kill that you did and playing from ahead, like that awesome dive that you did bot lane, or that team fight, that pentakill, whatever? That's much more fun, right? But it's incredibly important for you guys to put the time in and learn this skill. And the main reason, guys, is because of this 40-40-20 rule. Now, some people change the numbers. That's not really what is important. But as a premise, 40% of games are free wins. This is because maybe you have a Smurf on your team, you got 2 winning side lanes. You don't really need to do anything. You just do your job and you just win the game. You get carried, essentially. 40% of games are automatic losses, whether it was from AFKs, you know, Smurfs on the enemy team, trolls, whatever reason, 40% of games are losses. But this 20% over here is the most important thing for climbing. These 20% of games are all on you. You are the key differentiator in this game. And the way you should conceptualize it is that you have one winning side, one losing side, the junglers are quite even, and it's all on you. Now, some of these games you're going to get behind in the early game. Some of them you're going to get ahead in the early game. What I'm saying here is that if you are great at playing from behind, you are going to maximize, increase the amount of games that you win in this bracket. And that is incredibly important. And this is what the differentiator between the people who consistently climb to high elo, they always win these games. When it matters, when it's all on them, and it's a very close game, they will always execute and they always win these games. This is why the same players always climb, is because they're incredibly consistent and they can play from any point in the game, whether they're from behind, they're from ahead, whatever. So this is a very, very important topic for climbing. Now, moving on, guys, you have to understand that playing from behind in itself is a skill that you must refine. It's not luck. Yes, although some games you're going to get lucky, but I would say 90% of it is a specific skill. And guys, we're going to talk about the skills involved. We're going to show examples. We're going to cover all of it, but it is important to conceptualize it and at least understand that playing from behind in itself is a skill. So you can learn in it. You can get better at it. There's no such thing as you're just naturally talented at playing from behind, or naturally talented from you have a mental block and you can't play from behind. That's just not the case. It's a skill. You may be poor at it at the start, but we can improve at this process. And the goal of this video, guys, is I want to help you guys find that mindset and have that aha moment. And what I mean by that is once it all clicks together, hopefully by the end of this video, you'll realize what exactly you were doing wrong when you were playing from behind. And can't wait for that comment in the YouTube comments or it's on the Discord saying, Curtis, I watched this video on playing from behind. Now I know exactly what I was doing wrong. And now it all just makes a lot more sense. So that's what my goal is of this video. Now, before we get into the specifics, guys, I want to share with you this analogy that I think is crucial for you guys to internalize if you want to be a great League of Legends player over the long run. So what I'm going to do is share with you a real life example, and then we're going to tie it back to League of Legends. So let's just say we're at a restaurant and the chef comes up and he places 2 dishes on the table in front of you. On the right hand side, there's a big juicy salad. Maybe there's beautiful cuts of lean meat, there's a side of fruit, and maybe there's a big glass of water, ice cold water. Looks, it's not bad. But on the other side, the left hand side, there's a big juicy steak, maybe a side of fries, some onion rings, maybe a pint of beer, or maybe a Coke, whatever, and it looks delicious. Now, in that moment, you have a big decision to make. Do I want to be a healthy, disciplined person and vote for and have the nice looking salad, or do I want to be, maybe a little bit unhealthy, undisciplined, and splurge and just have this steak? Because at the end of the day, I'm still going to go home at night, I'm still going to go to sleep, I'm going to wake up the next day, nothing's going to happen, it's all going to be all good. Now, what happens if I were to just choose that steak? What I'm not realizing subconsciously is that I'm putting a tick in the column of being at an identity level an unhealthy, undisciplined person. But if I choose the salad, I'm actually putting a tick subconsciously in the column of becoming that healthy, disciplined, strict person. Now, it's the exact same with waking up in the morning out of bed. When you wake up, you have a decision to make. Am I going to get out of bed in the next 30 seconds and start my day? Or do I want to get out my phone, check Facebook, check Twitter, check Instagram, go on a Reddit, maybe go on YouTube, sit here for the next 30, 40 minutes, maybe even an hour, and just slowly get out of bed. Now, if you were to make the first decision and get out of bed in 30 seconds, what is that doing? You're putting a tick in the column of being a disciplined, efficient, healthy, it's hard to say healthy, but efficient and disciplined person. But on the other side of things, you are putting, if I were to stay in bed for say 40 minutes, that's putting a tick in the column of being maybe a lazy, sloppy, not really disciplined person. Now, over the long run, when you make these decisions, what you'll see if for some reason there was a list taken, if someone was right next to you taking a list, what you would see is that a person who identified as being very sloppy, lazy, unhealthy, undisciplined, you could literally pinpoint it back to all these specific decisions that they made over the past year. It's a long-term effect, and it creates an identity that becomes you as a person. Conversely, you're the person who gets out of bed early, goes to the gym, eats healthy, whatever. It's less about the physical part of things, although that is very important. It's about the mental effect. It's about, you're going to identify as a disciplined, healthy, like beast of a person. So that's what happens over the long run. Now, how does this relate to League of Legends? Now, it's the exact same with playing from behind. Are you the type of person, as soon as you get behind, you're just going to give up? You're going to FF, you're going to say GG, move on, team diff, whatever, and go on to the next game? Or are you going to be the person that, maybe I do die, but I'm still mega focused. I'm always trying to find a way to win that game. I'm willing to get carried to get that LP. I will do whatever it takes to win that game. Now, yes, if you just spam FF for 15 minutes, maybe you're right. Maybe that game wasn't winnable. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. It's the long-term psychological effects on how you view yourself at an identity level of what type of player you are. That's what happens. And I actually found myself doing this at one point where I would just say to myself, and the narrative I told myself was, oh yeah, spamming FF or saying giving up mentally, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Like, the game was over anyway. But what I didn't realize is that then that just became my default response. Okay, that became my mentality. I became that type of player that would give up so incredibly quickly. So, a question to ask yourself, guys, what sort of player do you want to be? Do you want to be the incredibly durable, mentally tough, really hard to beat player that, wins a lot of those 50-50 games? Or you want to be that bitch-like player who just gives up instantly, complains, that no one really wants to be on a team with? Do you want to be that sort of player? I don't know. So, have a think about it. I don't know if I explained this concept really well. It's something that I think about every now and then, and sometimes I forget about it, but I do think it's incredibly important, not just for League, but for life. But specifically, I found that when playing from behind, this has an effect on you, especially in the long run. So in order to prevent any confusion within this video, guys, I quickly want to clarify what exactly being behind even means, because it's not black and white. You're not just behind here and ahead here. It's a very gray area, and they're varying degrees of being behind. So here are just a few examples to get the brain ticking, to figure out, so we can get aligned about what being behind actually means. So the first one, you may be behind, but maybe just behind in tempo. Maybe you're behind in tempo or behind in river control. They have a lot more river vision control than you, and maybe you have none. Maybe they have pinks in the dot bush, etc. Maybe you've blown a flash and you can't posture aggressively, so they have a summoner advantage over you. So maybe you're technically behind in the lane in terms of summoners. You're not completely out of the game, but it's just a varying degree of being behind. Sometimes you die to a gank, but you didn't really lose too much farm. So you're actually not that far behind, because the enemy jungle got the kill, your counterpart didn't get the kill, and you actually still find 1v1. Maybe you died to a gank, but you can actually minimize the 1v1 and you actually still win 2v2s with your jungler. Who knows? Maybe you died to the enemy solo, and now you lose 1v1 trades really hard. So you're really screwed. You just have to catch CS under tower. It's another option. And then, guys, when you die more than once, let's say you get solo killed twice, this is where I really draw the line. I believe that if you die once, you make a few mistakes, there's plenty of opportunities to come back in the game. But if you tilt and you give up and then you die again and you get denied a lot of CS both of those times, that's where I really draw the line. That's where I don't really see it being behind. I actually believe that you're just out of the game. I feel like there's a line drawn at one point. Yes, it's a little bit, again, it's a very gray area, but I do want to raise this now, because if you send me a VOD where you're already 0-4, there's really not much you can do. There's a very large difference between being 0-1 and knowing how to play and identify you are behind and playing from when you're 0-1 comparatively to when you're 0-3. I would, when I review your VODs, guys, I would go literally to the first moment you die. Don't go to when you're 0-3 or 0-4, okay? That's another little thing as well. So part number one, guys, we need to identify the situation. So in a VOD review, when we begin looking at the VOD, we go to that specific moment we got behind. Maybe we died solo, we died to a gank, we died to a roam, whatever it was. But for learning purposes, guys, we need to get a little bit more specific. When you got behind, how did that actually change the way the lane is played out? Because if you die, as we know, because it's a very gray area, sometimes the lane isn't just completely over. There are varying degrees of being behind. So here are just a few, I would say these are 4 of the most common situations. Number 1, here on the left-hand side. You died, and you got behind, but you actually still do fine 1v1, but you're actually threatened by the enemy jungle because you have no flash anymore. So maybe you die to the enemy Orianna, the enemy jungle, but you're versing an Orianna, and you actually still find 1v1. But the only reason you can't really posture aggressively is because you don't have flash anymore, and you actually lose 2v2. So you might win 1v1, but lose 2v2. Who knows? Maybe you don't win trades 1v1 anymore. This is the second one here. You don't win trades 1v1 anymore, but your jungler is really strong and you can set up a lot of ganks. So maybe you're playing Lissandra, you die solo or whatever, but you have a fed jungle Rek'Sai, and you know that just because you don't really win trades 1v1 anymore doesn't mean you're completely out of the game, because you can still set up ganks for your jungler. The third one here. You can't really solo kill anyone or even get pressure anymore, but you scale well. That's a very common one for champions like Victor, Cassiopeia, Orianna, champions like that. And this fourth one, I'm behind now. I lose trades 1v1. I have to catch CS under tower. This is the worst case scenario. I can't really do anything. I have no gank set up and I have no scaling. So I'm literally just screwed. That's like a very rough situation. We're going to talk about examples in all of these different situations, guys. Don't worry. Part number 2, guys, we need to figure out the puzzle. And every single game you are in, when you die, you are basically in a puzzle, and you got to figure out the best solution for that specific example, because every puzzle is different, right? Not every puzzle is the exact same. So let's look at an example to try and clarify and identify some of the key factors we need to consider when identifying the next best move, okay? So let's just say we're playing Fizz here, and we actually died 1v1. We don't really have any solo kill pressure anymore. We can't kill them, and we don't even really take good trades anymore. Now, before we can understand how desperate of a situation we are actually in and what the next course of action should be, we need to think about, do I have winning sides or do I have losing sides? Okay, because if you have winning sides, then maybe you don't really need to be as desperate. But if you have losing sides, then maybe, that's a pretty concerning sign. Next, is your scaling good or is your scaling poorly? Is your scaling bad? Well, Fizz doesn't always scale poor. If you are the only AP on the team and also you're versing a lot of squishies, even if you die 1v1 and you're 0-1 in the early game, your game's not necessarily over. As long as you can farm, scrape a bit of farm together, get to your Zhonyas or your Lich Bane, you can still have a lot of threat in mid game. Why this is important is because if your scaling is good, then maybe you don't really need to rush. Maybe it's okay to just chill in the early game, whatever. It's not a big deal. But if your scaling is poor, then maybe you do need to be a little bit more desperate, maybe play for some more tempo bases. We'll get into the specifics later, but just to get the creative juices flowing. And the last main factor here is, can the enemy roam or can they not roam? Because if the enemy can roam and maybe you have winning sides, then maybe you need to play a little bit more aggressively, walk that tightrope a little bit faster so you can dissuade the enemy from roaming, because you want your sides to stay winning. You don't want them to be affected by that Zed who's ahead, etc. And we'll talk about ways you can do that as well. Or can the enemy not roam, which is a great sign. If the enemy cannot roam, then that's a really great thing for you, especially if you have winning sides. Conversely, it's the same down the other way. You just got to assess the situation. So a little note here, guys. The speed of identifying the situation you are within is a big determiner of the success you will have with playing from behind. This is why you need to go into the VOD review, go to that specific situation, and come up with a hypothesis. When you're in that game, what were you thinking? Did you think that do you have winning sides? Did you have losing sides? Did you think the enemy scaling was good or poor? Talk with your friend and to assess the situation. Get better at figuring out what situation you are within. Because if you don't do this, guys, and you're just thinking very linearly, I'm behind, I must go crazy, I must go super ham now, I can't let the enemy roam. Sometimes this is not the case, okay? Again, this will be clarified when we go over more examples. Again, I'm just trying to get the creative juices flowing. So part 3, guys, there are a few extra variables we also need to consider, not just those 3 factors from before. Now, the first one we need to consider is item and level spikes for you and your jungler. We also need to take into account jungle strength. Is there even gank threat? What is the 2v2 strength? Just because you lose 1v1 doesn't necessarily mean you lose 2v2. Maybe you win 2v2 but lose 1v1. That's a very common situation. And what's the game pace? This is, again, something that will come with experience. Game pace is basically, how many kills are happening, how often are people blowing flashes, is there 20 kills in 5 minutes, or how fast is the game being played? Because if the game is being played very slow, then maybe you don't have to be as desperate. Maybe you can take a back seat, relax. You can maybe walk that tightrope a little slower, and take a chill pill. But conversely, if the game's played really, really fast, then maybe you need to adapt to the situation and adapt to the pace the game is being played at. And again, guys, game pace is largely determined by the matchups that are actually played. So a matchup like Yasuo versus Aurelia is going to be very fast paced. Conversely, a matchup where it's like Orianna versus Victor is probably a little bit slower pace. If you've got an Amumu jungle versus Shyvana, it's probably going to be a very slow paced game. Conversely, if you've got Rek'Sai versus Elise, probably a lot faster. It's all determined by the pace of junglers in the game and the amount of kill threat. And note, guys, this will eventually become an intuitive process, but for the sake of review quality and improving at this skill, we must be able to review every detail in order to learn the optimal decision. Because if you guys don't know the optimal decision, even in review, and don't know what variables you need to take into account, then you're never going to improve at this skill. It's going to take you a very, very long time. So next, guys, this is just a little thing that I've just realized that is always running in the background. This little contraption. I don't even know really what to call it. And I talk about this more in my game plans video. I'll link that in the description below in terms of identifying your role in the game and identifying game plans. I have a whole separate video on that. But I am going to be referring to identifying your role quite a bit within this video. So if you're interested in that, click on that video below in the description. But basically, very simply put, your role within a game is determined by 3 main factors. Number 1, your champion's identity. Number 2, the matchup you are in specifically and the 2v2 matchup. And then number 3, the game state. And what I mean by game state is, what's happening in the side lanes. Do you have a winning side, losing side? The game pace, what objectives are up, what time in the game you're in, etc., etc. Just the overall game state. This all determines your role in any given game. Very important. And again, if you have any questions about identifying your role within a game, feel free to leave me a comment below, or again, refer to my game plans video, which I'll put in the description. So step number 1, guys, champion identity. So what we're going to do now is actually go through an example with Fizz. And remember, each situation you are within changes for whatever champion you're playing. So for the sake of this example, I've got 5 quick points here on the right hand side, that quickly show you what Fizz's overall identity is. Fizz thrives with kill threat or gank threat. Fizz loves a chaotic, faster style game. Fizz prefers to verse squishier members. He loves river skirmishes and great at roaming and diving sides. So let's look at the situations that Fizz could be within. So maybe Fizz gets behind, but actually still does fine 1v1, but the only reason he can't maybe all in the enemy is because he has no flash anymore, and his jungler's behind and the enemy jungler's quite strong. So fine 1v1, but maybe lose 2v2. The next one here is that, again, like I said before, you don't win trades anymore, but your jungler is actually really strong, so you can set up ganks with your ultimate, look for all-ins, whatever. The next one here, you don't get solo kill, you don't have any solo kill pressure, you can't even win 1v1 trades anymore, but you actually scale well, so you can actually take a chill pill. And then lastly, you're behind, you lose trades 1v1, you have to catch CS under tower, there's no gank setup potential, and there's no scaling. So that's worst case scenario. We're going to go through a few of these different examples, guys. Step number 2, guys, combine and approach. And what we need to do in this step is combine all the information we have about the champion's identity with the specific game state, also taking into account all of these differing variables. So bear with me. This is going to take a little bit of time, but it is a little bit overwhelming, but we need to take our time and break this down step by step. And once we've considered all the variables, then we can come up with that specific approach for this specific game. So this is a game where we are playing Fizz, and maybe we die in the early game. We die to a gank, we die to a roam, or even we just die solo. So maybe I don't win trades 1v1 anymore, but maybe my jungle Rek'Sai got to kill bot lane and is 1-0 and is actually quite strong. And because we know Fizz is actually quite good at setting up ganks at level 6, especially onto a mobile mages, let's just say we're versing a Victor, I know that I can still set up ganks. So as we go along, we need to start assessing these next 3 variables. Do I have a winning side or a losing side? Is my bot lane winning? Is my top lane losing? Whatever it is, we need to assess the side lanes. How's the scaling? Is my scaling good or bad? So in this game, let's just say I have losing sides. Let's just say my scaling is actually really bad, but let's just say the enemy can't roam. So you may ask, why do I have a set of scales under each of these specific variables? What I'm trying to get across here is that we need to assess all of these variables and weigh them up. What's more important? What's going on here? Is our bot lane really losing, in which this would be really, really heavy? Or is it just slightly losing? Is the scaling really, really bad? Or is it actually, it's relatively close, but it's not optimal? And can the enemy roam really, really well, or can't roam at all? There's no such thing as black and white in League of Legends, where it's always to varying degrees of. So this is where game sense really comes into play, and why we really need to get into the reviews and, come up with the hypotheses and refine. Now, also note here, guys, I've also quickly mentioned game pace and spikes. This is where this kind of ties into Fizz's identity. What sort of game pace are we within? So are we within a fast-paced game? How heavy are people trading? Are people blowing flashes? That sort of thing. We need to take that into account. We need to take into account key item spikes. These are those extra variables I spoke about before. So when do I spike? Do I need Lich Bane? Do I need Sheen? Do I just need a Darkseal and a Doran's? That sort of thing. And step number 1, I've actually got here, I didn't mention before, but stop the bleeding. Whenever you are behind, your default response should always be, step number 1, how do I stop the bleeding? And we'll get to this later. I just kind of have it here, so when you do watch the video, you can come back and just use that as a bit of a mental note. Now, let's get into the specifics. What is the skill set that this Fizz player needs to have in order to navigate this game? So let's break it down. If I don't win trades 1v1 anymore and I just want to set up ganks, what should I be looking to do? Well, I should be ideally able to stay healthy in lane, even at the sacrifice of CS, because I know I'm not really the carry anymore. The scaling's quite bad, my jungler's ahead. My main goal is to get my jungle ahead, and the only thing I can do is set up ganks. So how am I going to do that? if I am really low in lane, really low HP in lane, I'm not really going to be able to set up a gank, am I? Because by the time I hit 6, or even if I am 6, I'm not going to be able to posture aggressively enough to actually hit my ultimate and survive myself. I'm just going to die as well. There's no point trading 1-for-1, even though trading kills when behind is extremely valuable for 2 reasons. Gold is more efficient when gold is more useful when you are behind, and also shutdowns. That's another little thing. Shutdowns are a whole different story. Number 2, so that's incredibly important that even at the sacrifice of CS, guys, I should be looking to stay healthy for when my jungler comes by, so I can actually set up that gank. Very, very important. Number 2, I should be a skill that I need to have is I need to be able to identify my jungler's location. I shouldn't be looking to do things when my jungler's bot, because again, I lose 1v1. I should always be paying attention to my jungler's location. 3, I need to understand how to get the wave on my side, because I know I need plenty of room to chase down that opponent. If the Victor's sitting under tower and throws the lane under tower there, then what's going to happen? I'm not going to be able to set up ganks. Victor's going to be really safe in scale. I'm going to get zoned from CS. It's going to be an incredibly bad time. So wave manipulation, I need to have that skill down pat. I need to understand how to tempo reset. Because I can't stay in lane for extended periods of time because I'm losing trades, sometimes I need to just all in for the wave, take a really bad trade just to get the wave out, and tempo reset, refill my corrupting pot, maybe get a Dark Seal or Doran's, whatever, come back. Number 4, that's tempo reset, we've covered that one. Number 5, I need to know how to bait enemies in. So we will cover this in the example. Caps is a master of this. We'll talk about that. But baiting enemies in by either heavy trading or lane positioning. So for example, let's say I know my jungler's nearby, then I should look to start to heavy trade. Maybe get quite low as long as I'm getting the enemy low as well. Drag the enemy in to allow my jungler to finish off the kill, that sort of thing. And then number 6, understand leaning, because if I am leaning to the side of my jungler, most likely I'm going to get to that fight first if a fight does break out between both junglers, in which I'm maximizing the 2v2 likelihood. Right? I don't want to let the enemy mid laner get to that 2v2 first, because I'm Fizz. I love 2v2s. We know Fizz's identity. I'm a 2v2 champion. I love sloppy river skirmishes. I love it when people blow flashes. That's what I need. I need to get out of my laning phase. So leaning is another great skill to have. So as you can see, guys, all of these skills, right, are related to creating a favorable situation given my situation. And as you can see, step number 1 is always just figure out, you have to be able to identify what situation you are within. This is why it's not a sexy topic. It's going to take a lot of time to identify the situation that you were in the first place. And what I meant, and why I actually mentioned these ones here, guys, given I have losing sides, maybe I need to be a little bit more desperate, a little bit more aggressive with the way I'm trading. And given my scaling is actually quite poor, I should actually probably be okay with trading 1-for-1, because I need to get play. This is actually quite a desperate situation. But as well, given the enemy can't roam, I don't really feel bad holding the wave on my side. Sometimes when the enemy can roam, I feel a little bit bad for holding the wave on my side, because then they can just roam. Like a champion like Zed, if I'm versing Zed and I freeze it, or Talon, they can just ditch. So if versing those sorts of champions, as we'll see Caps, we're going to look at a Zoe versus Zed. He's always playing for the wave because he doesn't want Zed to roam. And we can look at that sort of thing as well. So hopefully this is starting to make a little bit more sense, but trust me, let's go through a few more examples just to, solidify a few of these things. So in this example here, guys, we're playing Cassio, and the situation we find ourselves in is that we're actually still fine 1v1, but we're a little bit behind in tempo and a little bit behind in pressure because we actually had to blow flash to escape a gank. So in this situation, even though I still do okay 1v1, not necessarily win, but I can go even, I can't really posture up aggressively in the lane because I'm scared of getting ganked. Maybe I lose 2v2 because of this situation. I do fine 1v1, but I lose 2v2. This is a very common situation in mid lane. But to round it off, let's see the other variables. Let's say I actually have winning sides. So I have an obvious winning side. Maybe my bot lane's doing really well. My scaling quite good. I'm playing Cassiopeia, so I'm completely fine scaling. And also, let's just say the enemy cannot roam. Now, this is, as you can see, even though it's not optimal, because I'm not going to be able to kill my opponent. I'm not really going to be able to do too many things proactively. I'm still, even though I'm somewhat behind, the situation is not as bad. This is why being behind is it's a gray area. There are varying extents. So in this situation, the skill set is completely different. These are some of the skills that you would need to develop. I need to have great side lane awareness to actually identify that, yes, I don't really need to do anything this game because I can see in the side lanes that my bot lane's actually winning. So I don't need to force anything. I don't need to solo kill my opponent. I don't need to trade flashes or go crazy. I don't need to do it even though I don't have flash. I don't need to burn the enemy's flash. I need to do my job. I need to stay farmed. I just need to not be a burden for my team. I know how to, ideally, I actually know how to waste enemy jungle time. Now, this is the Faker thing. Faker is a master at this. And the best way to waste enemy jungle time without dying is to walk that tightrope. I don't want to play so defensively that the enemy jungle just ignores me and they don't come anywhere near mid, and the enemy just gets pushed off every wave, controls river, and I do nothing, and I literally sit under tower and CS. That's not really pushing your limits. And this is actually a common thing I see when people playing from behind, as soon as they die once or blow flash, they're just super scared, and they sit under their tower, let the waves consistently come into them and think, oh no, it's fine, I'm just farming. Well, that's not always the case. There are always opportunities to walk that tightrope a little bit more aggressively. Whether it's by identifying cooldown windows, maybe the enemy used an ability and I can actually thin the wave a little bit more aggressive or posture a little bit more aggressively here, knowing that they don't have any abilities, or maybe they don't have much mana, so I can actually posture a little bit more aggressively here. Or maybe I know they have no pots, so I can walk up, take a trade, knowing I come up I come up ahead over the long run. Or maybe I have a ward, I can lean to one side, get that ward down, having a side to lean onto, so I can actually thin the wave a lot deeper in the lane rather than just catching CS under my tower. This is, and if you posture a little bit more aggressively in the lane, then the jungler's not going to completely ignore your lane. You can actually drag the enemy jungler towards your lane, lean to your vision, and either get them, like, let them fail a gank, or see the enemy jungle on the ward and escape that gank, which is a huge win for your team, because you're dragging attention away from your teammates that are actually winning and allowing them to just win even harder 2v2 or 1v1. Very important. Number 3 here, guys, efficiently use wards to lean, like I covered it in that one. Know how to be decisive with wave location. If I don't have flash, ideally I don't really want the wave on the enemy side, because then I can just die to a gank. So ideally I either want the wave in the middle or slightly on my side. But I don't want them to just slow build waves into me over and over again, or just fast push waves into me. Ideally I want to thin that wave. Ideally, I want to kind of keep it outside my tower, keep it there as long as possible. Because again, I don't want the wave to be pushing out, because we don't win 2v2. And I don't want the jungler to come to my lane because my side lanes are winning. I want my jungler to complement my winning lanes. The jungler should never be ganking the losing lane. The jungler should always be ganking the winning lane. Know how to lose gracefully. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard me talk about this term, lose gracefully, but I have an entire section on this specific skill. It's actually a whole different skill, losing gracefully. If you are interested in knowing how to lose gracefully or get better at that skill, I'm going to link a video in the description which I make on this topic specifically. I'll link it at the timestamp. I highly recommend that you watch it. It will blow your mind. Very important. And one of my favorite terms in League of Legends. So, in this situation, guys, just to round it off, look at the scales. We've got winning sides. So, the situation is not that desperate. My scaling is good. Situation is not that desperate. The enemy can't roam. The situation is not that desperate. Each of these scales is like a desperation scale. You get to see how poor the situation really is. Just because you blow flash doesn't mean the situation is really desperate. Incredibly important to understand. Next, guys, this is actually an example with Zoe. Now, this is a very dire situation. This is where we need to walk that tightrope incredibly aggressively and very carefully. This is a game where we're playing Zoe and I die 1v1. Maybe I die 1v1, get solo killed in a very rough match, or maybe a counter pick. Now, I lose trades 1v1. I have to catch CS under tower here. I have no gank setup potential, and I don't scale. And I also have losing sides, we have bad scaling, and the enemy can roam. So maybe I'm versing a Zed. I don't outscale. I'm behind, I'm screwed. I have losing sides, the enemy can roam. This is a very bad situation. So you may ask then, Curtis, what do you do? And a lot of the time, you're probably not going to win these games, but there are things you can do to turn the tides and, again, play that percentages game and, really maximize the situation you are within. So skill set, number 1, create opportunities through wave manipulation. If you are keeping the wave on your side and then maybe Zed has to use W aggressively to break that freeze or get that wave in, then that may potentially cause a gank opportunity. Like, you're maximizing the chances of Zed being overextended. So you must have a really good understanding of it, how you want the wave, where you want the wave to be. Exact same thing with, thinning the wave. You don't want it to get so big that Zed can just roam. Wave manipulation in general is incredibly important when behind. Next, hold CC and heavy trade when the jungler is around. There's no point in heavy trading when your jungler's making a play somewhere else. This is so big. If you're behind, right, it's actually better for the enemy if you're heavy trading when your jungler's not there. Because, again, that means most likely you're going to get ganked first, their jungler's going to get there first, and it's actually giving the jungler an option to do something. Because if your jungler just killed bot lane, their jungler wants to do something. And if you're heavy trading mid, it's just increasing the chances of you dying. So, ideally, you want to be holding your key abilities, using it for self-peel, not using your CC aggressively, staying as healthy as possible. And then when your jungle is around, then you want to use your CC, time it to chain CC, help set up that gank, heavy trade when he's around so your jungler can actually clean up a kill, that sort of thing. Jungle awareness, incredibly important. Really understanding how to navigate your champion when your jungle is and isn't there. Time flashes and communicate windows of opportunity. If you died solo, a lot of the time they've either used their ultimate or maybe used their flash, or even after that they're going to play very aggressively. You can communicate. Flash timers, you can communicate they have no ultimate. A lot of the time there's certain champions that their ultimate is their escape tool. So Zed, for an example, a lot of the time is hard to gank when he has not just when he used W, but if he has ultimate, it actually can be quite annoying because he can dodge a lot of key abilities. Very important to communicate as well. Tempo reset for item advantage and lane control. If you are in a very fast-paced game, the sides are losing, the scaling's bad, the enemy can roam, ideally you don't want to be sitting like a bitch under tower and just, playing this very too calculated game. A lot of the time, you're going to have to heavy trade, recall, come back, adapt to the game pace. This kind of ties into this point over here, guys. Number 4 ties into assessing the game pace. You cannot play a slow scaling game of Azir in this sort of game. If you're playing Azir, for example, you need to adapt and play a faster game of Azir. Play for early Dark Seals. Play for maybe an extra Doran's Ring. Whatever it is, you need to adapt to the specific game pace. 5, understand how to bait opponents. We will cover this in an example. Caps is the master of this, and we'll use a specific example to show this point. Now it's example time, guys. We're going to show a few examples from a Discord member we have, and we're also going to go examples from Caps. But just a quick note, guys. If you want to see an example that I already have of someone really knowing how to minimize a really crappy situation, check out my Pro Player Insight episode 3 featuring Caps, where he plays a game from behind as Kassadin into Twisted Fate, into an aggressive jungle matchup as well. He does a great job of minimizing. So highly recommend that if you want extra resources and knowing how to minimize in a very tough situation from behind. Now let's get into the examples, guys. So in this example here, guys, this is of a game where Caps is playing Orianna into LeBlanc. He literally just died to another Nunu gank. His top lane 0-2 and gets outscaled. His jungler's just been perma-farming the entire game doing nothing. This Nunu's just been perma-ganking. His bot lane is 1-5 at the moment and is about to be 1-6. This situation is doomed. Twitch is going to outscale. Fiora's going to outscale. Nunu, I mean, yes, Shyvana does okay in scaling, but the game's not going to get to that point for Shyvana to be useful. It's going to be a very hard game. So remember when breaking down the VODs before, we should know, given all those variables, this is a very fast-paced game. There's 13 kills in 7 minutes 50. It's not super fast, but it's relatively fast. He knows that they don't really scale. Yes, he scales, team scales okay, but if he plays the game very slow and doesn't adapt to the game pace, it's going to be very unlikely that he's going to be able to win this game. So in a second, I'm assuming he's weighed up these variables, whether it's actively or intuitively, most likely intuitively. He comes back to lane, he sees his bot lane die again. He knows that he has to get something done. And it seems like he knows he can't really get anything done bot because that's completely doomed. The only person he could probably get ahead in this game is his Jace. Because Jace, at this point, given Fiora's not out of control, not at key spikes yet, Orianna could potentially swing that matchup topside. So he actually decides to just hold the wave here for a while, deny LeBlanc a wave of CS, knowing that, Shyvana's not in the area. He obviously ideally wants to be taken into account jungle location, so he denies a bit of CS here. Crashes it under tower. Beautiful. Now, if this were a very slow-paced game where it's relatively even, maybe he's got a winning side lane, he probably wouldn't roam. Caps is not the heavy, not like a Doinby. He doesn't just roam for chaos. He would probably sit here, ideally keep the wave in the middle, maybe play for short trades onto this LeBlanc, stop LeBlanc from roaming, and just isolate the lane 1v1, lean to one side, ward one side, that sort of thing. But given he understands this, the desperate nature of this game, given, assessing all his variables, I was watching this VOD and I'm like, wait, he's spamming the wave? Why is he doing this versus LeBlanc? Uses his Q a few times, uses his double, uses his E, auto attacks, instantly roams and responds to this Nunu, this Nunu gank top side. So Jace avoided, flashed away from this gank, I believe. And then he sees Nunu, or Fiora anyway, hasn't bought yet, half HP, low mana, Nunu still level 5. He probably thinks in this situation, I could potentially, I think me and Jace actually win this 2v2. I want to get something done because this might be my opportunity. He's looking and processing so much information because he knows he wants to get something done and actually help this Jace. He needs someone on his team to be ahead. So he roams and nothing really happens. But it's the mindset behind going, literally making that decision to push that wave and respond to this play is what I'm looking for. This is what we're talking about, percentage plays. We're talking about putting yourselves in positions that are going to increase the chances of winning this game. And he knows, and as a concept, guys, when you are behind, it's great to trade kills. If a 3v3 happened here and they traded kills, even though they didn't come out ahead, but LeBlanc, you got this 300 gold shutdown on LeBlanc, you're going to be in a really, really good spot. Anyway, he comes back, ends up getting this blue buff. Nunu ganks top again. Jace ends up trading kills, and instead of just going straight back to mid lane, he thinks that this could be a really good opportunity because his jungler's in the area. He just got blue buff. Nunu, most likely, I'm assuming he didn't think Nunu had ult or something, and they go for a very scrappy, sloppy 2v2. Now, this was very, very close. They end up killing the Nunu. He nearly, I think Caps could have played this a little better, and this LeBlanc just survives, and they trade 2-for-1. Now, if you think about it, that was a very close 2v2. And if they traded 2v2 there, he would have got that shutdown. The game probably would have been very, very different. Orianna would be in a very nice spot, really come back, be able to, I know, wouldn't be able to get the Archangels, but I don't think, but it would be in a very different position. So, yes, this didn't end up turning out amazing, but they end up trading overall on top side of the map 2-for-3. Now, if he just stayed mid, it probably wouldn't have been a 2-for-3 trade. It probably would have been the 1-for-1 trade. And again, trading kills in general when behind is great, and it could have easily been a 3-for-3. So my point is, in this specific example, guys, is that again, you need to adapt to the game pace. You need to adapt to the situation, what's happening. You need to understand how desperate of a situation the game actually is. So let's take a look at another situation, guys. So this is another recent game of Caps playing solo queue. This time he's playing Zoe into Zed. Now I'm about to show you as we play this replay, he actually dies twice. He dies twice to roams in gank. So he dies to a support roam here, nearly escapes, but then gets chased down and dies. He comes back to lane. And you'll see the first thing that he actually does. So in this situation, actually, it's important to understand. His bot lane's actually winning really hard. This Kai'Sa's 0-3. His top lane is just even, so he has a winning side, guys. His jungler's quite strong. His bot lane's quite strong. He's not the carry this game. And you literally see how literally the decisions that he makes in this game make a lot of sense and reflect that, that breakdown of the specific game state. So he comes back, and you'll see in a second, gets the wave. What's the first thing he does? He wards his winning side. You always want to ward the winning side, guys, because, again, you want to protect that side. And yes, it could be also because of Infernal Dragon as well, but it's a bit of a 2-in-1 combo deal there as well. So he goes, he wants to thin the wave as much as he can, because the less pressure and the less move that this Zed can get, knowing that he's versing a champion that can roam, even though he is behind 1v1 now, I mean, he's not really behind because Zed didn't really get the kill, so it's still somewhat even, but he does want to minimize the amount of room that this Zed has to roam. So he's playing for the wave, sacrificing a bit of HP. He leant onto the wrong side here in a second, and you'll see postures too aggressively and dies again. So he dies again to another gank here. Boom. Now, what he does next is really, really interesting. So he comes out of base here. So he's 0-2. He understands, okay, he's in a very sticky situation. His Nidalee's quite strong, but his bot lane still is very strong. He doesn't need to be the carry this game. Their top laner actually gets a kill as well, so he actually has 2 winning sides now, ideally, potentially. He comes back, gets the wave. You'll see the saying, he gets his blue buff. Nothing too special. Comes back, thins the wave as fast as he can. Tries to get all the casters. Beautiful. Gets the next one. Now, again, wards, you'll see in a second. Okay, here he actually goes for the wave again. I think here he should have actually warded, but you'll see in a second he actually wards. Trying to push the wave in. Again, this is all, in my opinion, he's not looking for Qs on Zed because he does have Ares. So a lot of the time you see Zoe players, even when they're behind, they continue to do Qs on the enemy. He's purely playing for the wave. All he's doing is keeping the enemy pinned in the lane. He doesn't need to kill Zed in this lane anymore. He just wants to play co-op versus AI. As long as he can wave clear from a distance, he wins this game because he knows as long as he doesn't die anymore, doesn't let the Zed roam, his team will carry him. So he's always just focusing his Qs and his ultimate usage on the wave. He gets the wave in, and look at this situation here. A dragon fight. Now, notice how he plays this. He doesn't go in aggressively and go for an aggressive bubble or Q onto the Nidalee. He actually chills. He doesn't even walk into river. He knows that his Varus is not here. Varus is the strongest, pretty much the strongest member on the team right now. So he only goes for the steal. And misses it, whatever. Not a big deal. He doesn't put himself in a dangerous situation. Then you'll see in a second. Comes back to mid here. And now, look at this. He plays for the wave again. Even at the cost of HP, he plays for the wave. He doesn't care about doing necessarily a lot of damage onto Zed. Nidalee roams again. Sorry, goes for a gank. Then he tries to ward onto his strong side, clear a pink ward, always warding onto his strong side, even though the next objective's dead. And then he sees his jungler in the area. So initially, he goes for a Q on the wave. And look at this. Considering how he was playing before, this is how you bait opponents in. Now he uses his R super aggressively, trying to get Zed to go onto him. Zed's too smart, doesn't do it, but then Caps is able to land the bubble anyway, and they get a really, really nice kill here. Now look at that. Not only he warded the strong side, cleared the pink for his jungler, postured incredibly aggressive to try and bait the Zed in, and again, held his bubble for his jungler, so his jungler would get in range, and then they'll get that kill. I just found that so... Again, you may think this is, again, oh, nothing special, but it's all the small details that allow you to navigate a situation from behind. There are so many things that Caps could have done here. He could have not walked into river, not warded his strong side, warded top side. He could have actually tried to fight that dragon fight, not identified that his Varus wasn't there. He could have actually just played for the wave here and not baited Zed in. Before, he could have actually traded heavy with Zed, even though his jungle wasn't in location. He could have done so many things better and worse. He couldn't have just not died to those ganks, the same thing. But given the situation he put himself in, he identified the variables in the game and came up with a course of action. And now, largely for Caps, it is a lot of the time it will be intuitive, but for you guys in your review, this is where you need to engage in that review and ask yourself, should I have played for the wave? Or should I have actually just played to heavy trade here? Should I have held my CC? Should I have actually used my flash aggressively? Which side should I have ward given where my jungler is, where my strong side is? Do I have a strong side? Should I have been trading aggressively the entire time? As you can see, there was a mixture between how he played that Orianna game comparatively to the way he played the Zoe game. So I thought that hopefully now it's starting to click a little bit more. Now what I want to do is actually show you 2 examples of a Discord member and what not to do and some of the key mistakes I see with people from playing from behind. So in this example here, this is of a Cassio into Zed VOD. Now in this situation, this Cassio just got solo killed by the Zed. The Rengar's really, really fed. I believe everyone's raging on the team. This Elise and Malphite are raging at each other. There's an AP Malphite top with first item lost chapter Comet with an Elise top lane. Elise is doing okay, but you know, this Rengar's actually quite strong. But more importantly, the bot lane is getting dumpstered. So bot lane's getting absolutely destroyed. It's Leona and MF versus a Brand Zaya. It's not looking good bot lane at all. And given that he's just got solo killed, this is a very hard game to win. And this is a game where, yes, if he's behind, you have what are the 2 options? Usually you want to give pressure and sit under tower, play off your item spikes, play for your lost chapter, play for your archangels. But I feel like in this game, you can't really afford to play super defensively because Zed is a champion that can roam really, really well and influence his side lanes, especially a squishy Malphite and a very squishy bot lane. So, and you'll see in a second, Elise actually ends up going top, even though I think that Cassio should be playing towards this. Cassio should have been pinging mid to look for a play and control mid vision. Could put Pink on top side, given that bot lane was doomed. So I think that's the first mistake in this VOD here. He actually puts the Pink on the bot side, even though the jungle was top side and top side was the only hope. So top lane and the jungle and top and jungle end up failing that 2v2, missing the Malphite ult, and I believe they end up dying on the back end to Rengar. So this game is mega screwed here. It's really hard to win. So in this situation, what do you need to do? Well, either you want to set up a gank and hold the wave here and set up a gank and wait for Elise to come back, or you're confident in winning the 1v1 or pushing your limits and playing for a risky 1v1, knowing you have ultimate, you have ignite, this is your opportunity. Potentially Zed still doesn't have ultimate, I don't know, and go for a risky heavy trade 1v1 and go for that solo kill. This would be the moment to go for it. It's an isolated 1v1. You're probably going to have no vision control anyway. Cassio screws up the 1v1, ends up just making it a really heavy trade, which, you know, it's not terrible given that Elise can come back in the map and probably influence it. But here, this was a situation where Cassio actually could have played this so much better. Cassio could have easily just ulted the Z ult, because you just ulti behind you. It guarantees the stun, then you miasma, then you can chase down Q, chase with exhaust, whatever, potentially even get a kill. But my point is here, even though this on the surface may look quite bad in terms of a bad play from behind, this is actually not too bad. Even though this is probably done autopilot, rage, like revenge sort of play, which we'll get into in a second. But this is actually not too bad, because even though I think I probably would have waited for my Elise, it's not the end of the world. Because again, it's a very sticky situation. It's a very desperate situation. And I feel like if you were being logical in this situation, you would probably realize, you know what? I actually have to probably push my limits and do something crazy. Otherwise, we're just going to lose anyway. So that's the point I'm trying to get across in this VOD. Now I want to show you another VOD where he actually plays very fast when he doesn't need to. So in this VOD here, it's the same player. This time he's playing Twist of Fate into Orianna. He just died to a gank very early on in the game, but his bot lane just got a double kill. So he comes back into lane, and it's actually not too bad because the wave's actually in a decent spot. He can actually thin the wave and hold a freeze here and actually deny CS, which I believe that is what he does. Yeah, that's what he does here. Now, in this situation, it's not that desperate at all. Think about it. The scoreline's only 2-2. His bot lane just got a double kill. The situation is pretty good. His jungler seems like he's in an okay spot here. He chases out the enemy jungle, whatever. He's actually denied Orianna a lot of farm. So the situation's completely fine. All he needs to do is identify his key spike, what item he needs to play off. Yes, he might not win 1v1. He doesn't have flash. He probably can't posture aggressively. And yeah, maybe Orianna might bully him a little bit, but he's not going to die. If you lean to one side, you're not going to die. You don't need to do anything crazy. Play for your catalyst, play for your roller, play off your main ability, which is your level 6, your ultimate, and influence your strong side. You have a strong side here. You don't need to force anything. Yes, you are behind 1v1, but 2v2, you're okay. And in terms of the whole map, the game state, you're completely fine. This is still quite a slow pace. I mean, hasn't proven to be a very fast-paced game yet. You don't need to force anything. So in this moment, Ori comes back. You've actually denied a lot of CS. It's completely fine. You're actually somewhat even in XP. Now, in a second, you'll see how fast, in terms of game pace and what this TF does. Look, he's heavy trading here. He doesn't even have enough gold for his catalyst. He's trying to heavy trade here for some reason. Gets a nice Q on the back end somehow. And what do we see? Here, jungle location, bot lane. Bot lane just recalled coming out of base. His jungler's on Krugs, and he's heavy trading. Yes, he does have a side to lean onto, but what's this doing? What is this play? What is this decision actually doing? This is what I call the revenge kill. Okay? You die, or either most likely revenge kill. You're trying to get payback on this guy. You're trying to try harder and try and do something out of your power just to make some crazy play, when you don't need to do that. Be logical, calm, cool, collected. We'll get into the mindset stuff in a second. But look at this. The Graves is nowhere near. The bot lane's recalled. He hasn't got enough gold for Catalyst. Heavy trading like this is just, how is it favorable? Orianna has barrier. You'll see it in a second. And yes, at a surface 1v1 level, it's not that bad. But then he just dies to a gank. Actually, he's going to die again. He actually dies solo. But he ends up, he would have died to a gank anyway. Now, what went from a situation where he was 0-1 and it wasn't that bad, he's now just died twice. He's 0-2, still can't afford his catalyst, and he's probably going to have to use TP back to lane here potentially. If not, either way, it's still a very sticky situation. So as you can see, guys, This is it's night and day. If you are able to actively, while you're in base, while you, after that first death, use that time to assess the situation, be logical about what is reality, what is the reality of this game, what's happening in the side lanes, how fast do I need to play this game, how desperate is the situation, do I need to minimize, do we win 2v2, where do I want the wave given the situation. You go through that process, and again, what could have easily been a win, it turns into a loss. What could have easily been a win, now you've just made the game unnecessarily difficult just for no reason. So I thought this was a really good example, and it's great to compare this from Caps and the way Caps identifies a situation towards just an average high platinum, low diamond player. Step number 3, guys, mindset and tilt. So now we have a bit of the theory about the gameplay stuff. We've actually seen a few examples. Now we want to tie it all together by talking about the mindset, and the mindset and tilt aspect of playing from behind is so incredibly important to understand, because this could be your main problem. You may know what to do in theory. You may even be able to review it and pinpoint exactly what you could have done better, but you don't actually understand what's going on mentally that's blocking you from actually making the correct decisions. So let's actually start by covering some of the main reasons people struggle with playing from behind, and what are some of the actions we see unfold that lower people's chances of winning. The first one, the El Clasico, is the revenge response. You die to a gank, or you die solo, you die to a roam, whatever, and the default response is, I got to get payback. I got to get my revenge. I got to flex on this guy. I can't make him look better than me. If someone thinks this guy's better than me, I got to do something crazy to get my revenge and kill this guy. I got to solo kill. I got to find a way to solo kill. When you're in this, when you have this sort of response, what are you doing? You're not being logical. You're not assessing the variables. You're not using the scales to weigh up. Well, do I scale well? What's the pace of the game? Do I have a winning side? How desperate the situation is? How do I stop the bleeding? What's the game state right now? What objectives are up? You're not thinking about any of that. All you're thinking about is, how can I get a solo kill? And a lot of the time, that's not really going to be possible, or even if it is possible, the chances are so slim, and it's such a gamble. And a majority of the time, you're actually going to decrease your chances of winning by going for that solo kill, because you're going to heavy trade most likely, and then your jungler is going to be playing to the winning side, and you're going to create a whole host of problems. Very common response. The second one, the I won't learn anything anymore response. This was, I'm guilty. I was guilty of this one for a long time. This was probably, for me, one of my biggest mental blocks ever. And it took me a long time. It's even still to this day, there's some games that I have this response where I die once, and my default response is, I just want to go to the next game. I know what I did wrong. This game's unrealistic. I made a sloppy mistake. I'm not going to learn anything anymore. I already know what I did wrong. Let me just get into the review. I just want to 15, FF at 20, get out of this game. I've checked out mentally. As soon as that one mistake happens and I'm walking back to lane, I'm not thinking and assessing the variables and assessing the game state anymore. All I'm thinking, replaying in my mind, is, what could I have done better? I wish I could go to that VOD and review it now. I have to play this game. I'm not going to learn anything here anyway. This is all unrealistic. The game would have been so different if I just didn't die there. Again, it's a waste of time. Thinking about it, save the review for after. There's still a game to play. The game's not always over, okay? Very, very common response, and we'll cover some ways to deal with these in a second. The third one, the try harder response. This one makes me laugh every single time. You see it a lot with a lot of younger players. They die once, and their response is, I got to try harder now. I'm going to try extra hard to make up for what happened. And the analogy I like to use is, when and for those of you watching, guys wear rings, girls wear rings, you may resonate. You have a ring on your finger, and maybe you've been doing work, or you've been doing things and moving your hands. And what happens, your finger gets swollen, so it actually gets bigger, more blood in it. I don't know the medical stuff, but it gets your finger gets thicker. What happens, sometimes maybe you're in a jewelry store and you try on a ring, and then you get really nervous, and then you start moving in a bunch, and then your finger gets swollen, and the harder you try to pull it off, it won't come off. It's stuck. You start panicking, and then it gets all nervous, and then the finger gets more swollen, and you can't get it off. The harder you try, the harder it is going to be to get that ring off your finger. So a lot of the time when you're getting a ring off a finger, or getting a ring off in general, calm down, relax, slow down your heart rate or whatever, just chill. And then the blood, your finger will thin down a little bit, and then you can get the ring off. And there's, again, a lot of different analogies that you guys will know in your own workplaces or other environments. But the harder you try, a lot of the time, you're just going to get yourselves in very sticky situations. if you're ever coming in with that mentality where I've got to try harder to make up for whatever happened, you're already not in reality. Okay, you're not seeing the factors that you need to be seeing. You're going to be compensating. You're going to be making plays that aren't great for that specific game. You're going to get yourself into very sticky situations. A very funny response. The next one is the team difference response. Now, this one's fascinating. And this one is something I realized recently by watching a lot of a lot of people with a lot of mental blocks. And the biggest one with this one is what they do. Let's just say they die to a support roam. So the support roam's mid and blows your flash or even kills you. Maybe the bard or a pike or something. Or maybe the jungler ganks you, whatever. What a lot of people's responses are, team difference or support difference, jungle difference, whatever it is. What then happens is that your brain and your attention then is directed only towards things or details that are going to confirm your initial point of view. So all you're going to be doing that entire game is waiting for your support to do something bad or waiting for the enemy to do something good to point out and confirm with yourself and talk to your friends on Discord. Look at this game. Look how bad my support is. Look how good that guy's a smurf. He's so good. Like all your attention is always going to be focused on to confirm that initial, to make yourself feel better. Right? It's to help you feel better. Because at the end of the day, if it's a team difference or a jungle difference or a support difference, it's not you. It's not your fault. I don't have to take any responsibility. I'm gonna shift it all onto that dude over there because that guy's the reason I'm losing this game. It's nothing to do with me. And then what's gonna happen is that if you have that mindset or that approach or that response, you're not gonna be thinking at all about how to adapt in that situation. You're just gonna wait for that game to be over essentially and confirm all your thoughts, even in the review. You're gonna waste a lot of time. It's a very toxic mentality to have. Very important to be aware of, and that one might click for a lot of you guys. And this last one here is the number 5. I don't know what to do anymore. So again, hopefully this video can actually fix this one with all the specifics we talked about. I literally don't know what to do. I don't know how to minimize. I don't know what skills I need to learn. We covered a lot of that beforehand, but hopefully that's a very fixable one. That's not necessarily a fixed mindset. But if you have that response, that initial response, I don't know what to do. Usually, if you don't know what to do, that has a flow-on effect for the entire game. Usually you just check out, because if you know what to do, but you have a good mental, even if you have a good mental, but you don't know what to do, a lot of the time you're going to make more mistakes because you're just lost. So it has a flow-on effect. It's very important to understand. Again, the great thing about this video is that we should be able to fix that one quite easily. So guys, you must understand that when you are behind, you are playing a percentages game. Every little decision that you make alters that little number. Similar to when you put something on the scales, right? When you put something on the scales and it goes side to side, nothing is black and white. Every single decision you make, whether it's, did you push that wave? Did you hold that wave? Did you lean on this side? Which side did you ward? Were you aware of the winning side? All of these little details, or did you bait them in? How heavy are you trading? Were you tracking the enemy jungle? All these things add up, okay? It's a percentages game. When you're playing from behind, yes, you do all the right things, it may only shift it from a 40% chance of winning to a 41%. Do you want to maximize the chances or not? It's purely up to you, man. I don't know how badly you want to win that game. And note, guys, exactly, this is an extremely important point, guys. Acknowledging you actually are on the back foot is so important, because what happens a lot of the time, people don't even realize that they're on the back foot. They blow flash, they're down in tempo, they have no river control, they can't really walk up aggressively, or they don't even know that in the first place. And what happens, they don't change their behavior, because when you play from behind, as we've identified, you got to change the way you play the game. And the first step is always acknowledging it. In any behavior change in general, not even league, the step number 1 is actually identifying that you have a problem in the first place. So lack of mental clarity leads to loss of awareness, and then you end up digging yourself a deeper hole. Very, very important, guys. And for me personally, guys, tilt largely came from really not knowing what to do. And this ties on from that point before. And here's what I realized that really kind of cleared things up for me. Number 1, getting carried is a skill. You may think, Curtis, it's not a skill. What are you talking about? Getting carried is a skill. Trust me, it is an absolute skill. We spoke about that. Again, my video, Losing Gracefully, I talk a lot about that. That's about losing gracefully is basically the main skill that you need to improve on in terms of getting carried. But getting carried is a skill. Someone can be good at getting carried. Someone can be bad at getting carried. Someone can be a detriment to a team. Someone can just be nothing. They may not be winning you a game, but they're not going to lose you a game. That's the player you want to have on your team when you're fed. You don't want someone just continually dying. You want to know someone who can stay healthy in lane, who knows how to respect or change their behavior when they don't have flash, knows how to tempo base and stay healthy, knows how to use their wards, where to use their wards, etc. Getting carried is a skill. And when I realize this, internalize this, that I realized, holy crap, it actually is a skill. I can get better at getting carried. Then I started to really get into the review and get better at that. Losing gracefully is a skill, kind of ties into number 1. Again, I've got that video in the description for those of you interested. Number 3, emotional control is a skill. Really controlling your emotions and knowing how to control your emotions is a skill in itself. I'll cover that in a second. And again, you don't need to carry every game. So I had to have a shift in mentality. When I was younger, my mentality was, if I'm not the carry of every single game, if I get behind, I've lost. Like, I had this weird victim mindset where it was like, it was not a victim. I don't know what it was, a victim mindset. I don't know what sort of mindset it was, but it was basically, if I'm not carrying this game, no one's going to carry me. So I don't want to win the game if I lose. So I had to just, I don't want to win the game if I lose my lane type thing. I had to get over that. I had to shift my mentality. My role every game isn't to always carry. Sometimes my role is just to get carried, like I said before. Chaos is a natural element of the game. Number 5, chaos is a natural element of the game. Learn to thrive in it. No game is going to be played like an LCK game 5. No one, half the time people are autopiloting. Most likely at the elo you're in, it's very sloppy, very chaotic. There's going to be chaos. It's just that's a part of the game. When you download League of Legends and you install it, there should be a big warning. Warning. Chaos. This game is filled with chaos. Don't expect the game to be played perfectly. This will save you from raging a lot in the future. That's what it should say on the client. Because everyone thinks that everyone should be an LCK level player and play flawlessly and time flashes, never die to ganks. You can't expect that, guys. You die to ganks, I die to ganks, everyone dies to ganks. The game's going to be sloppy. It's going to be chaotic. You just got to learn to thrive in it. And I talk about Bruce Lee all the time. Be like water. You got to adapt. Okay? Come to terms with reality. The game's going to be sloppy. You just got to thrive in it. Okay? Very, very important. Note, guys, playing from behind generally leads to a win by either number 1, waiting for that big throw play by the enemy. So maybe you're in a very slow-paced game. That's fine. You can wait, chill for a little bit, wait for that big shutdown because people don't play flawlessly. Or number 2, slow and steady decisions that add up to be meaningful over time. Again, that's the way I prefer. I find the best way to come from behind is literally just make great quality decisions over time. And it ties into my philosophy in League, where it's all the small details add up to one big thing. So it might actually be all these small details add up to one big throw play by the enemy. You don't give them those picks. You don't let them get the free Baron. They get frustrated. They start the Baron. You steal the Baron. And then you're back in the game. That sort of thing. Okay, and how we actually navigate those situations is the tricky part. And so Curtis, how would you suggest improving emotional control? Number 1, deep breaths in base and lull states. If you don't have anything to do, you're walking back to base, or maybe you're dead, you've got a big death timer, maybe you're tilted from the last game, or maybe even like everyone's dead on the enemy team, or it's in a lull state in the game. Take some time to just take a few deep breaths and recenter yourself, okay? Calm down your breathing. It takes literally a few seconds, and you will feel much better and much more in control of your physiology. Very, very important. Number 2, take a second to assess the situation and literally come to terms with reality. Okay? You die. Instead of thinking about team difference, thinking about how bad you look, thinking about how annoying, how poorly you played that, whatever, literally take a second to look at the situation objectively. Say, Curtis, I'm dead. Stop complaining. What do I see here? Okay, I lose now. I probably lose trades 1v1. My bot lane's losing, but my top lane's actually winning. Oh, okay, Infernal Dragon's up, but maybe we should trade that off a Rift Herald. My jungler's actually still kind of strong. I don't have Flash anymore, so I probably need to keep the wave on my side. Just assess the situation. What is going on? What is the information that you have in that game? Just start thinking about it. Literally say it out loud to yourself. Process it. What this is going to do is going to distract you from thinking about all the nonsense that you would have otherwise been thinking about, which leads to my third point. Direct your attention to the next actionable step. It may not be the correct play, guys. It may not be the correct play. It doesn't matter. Have a hypothesis, test it. Who cares? As long as you're directing your attention towards the next actionable step, you're going to be, you're going to be preventing yourself from thinking about all that nonsense. So think about it. Say, if you're telling to yourself, okay, I've assessed the situation, what I need to do now is I need to keep the wave just outside my tower. I need to get to 1100 gold, and I need to make sure that I'm leaning to one side because I can actually die to a gank very easily. You say that to yourself, you have something that you can actually focus on rather than mindlessly going back into the lane and just playing reactively and waiting for whatever to happen. Because if you do that, you're going to find yourself getting in more sticky situations. Your mind's going to drift to jungle difference, team difference. You're going to think about how bad you look. You're going to think about what's for dinner. You're going to think about whatever, any of these things that aren't going to specifically help you from playing with behind. So trust me, directing your attention to something is a great tool to distract yourself from getting tilted. This is like, it is a bit of a band-aid solution because a lot of the time emotional control comes with maturity and discipline outside of the game, which ties into, you know, my one of my initial slides where I talk about the voting system. It comes through that, because if you're an emotionally controlled person in and out of the game, it will usually stem into the game as well. But this is a great band-aid solution for you guys if you're still trying to improve, like start your I guess your initial improvement towards it is again, distract yourself from being tilted. It's like a way to distract yourself. And this is all because the mind drifts. Very important to understand. So here are a few extra tips for optimizing. Number one here, pay attention to any information about the enemy jungle location, especially when the enemy jungle ganks another lane. Maybe they're spotted on a ward, maybe you see them recall. And the reason this is important is because you need to be desperate for this information, because this can lead to windows for resetting, heavier trading. You know, you can go for an aggressive trade knowing it's an isolated 1v1. Maybe you know you can set up a gank. You got a short window to set up a gank before the enemy jungle gets there. Maybe you know you can actually make a roam play on the opposite side of the map, knowing the enemy jungle's bot. If I shove this wave and roam top side, I could probably make a play and not get counter ganked. Again, you need to be desperate for any bit of information as possible. Because think about it, we're playing the percentages game. If you want to make a great quality decision, the more information, the better. Number two, don't be afraid to sacrifice efficiency for chaos and surprise. This is actually a military concept. I got this from a military concept, and I actually spoke about this with my team in 2017. Sometimes when you're behind, and G2 are the masters of this, you do a play that is on paper inefficient because it catches someone off guard. At the highest level, the higher you get, people know what plays you will do. He's going to come back to lane, and then he's going to get that wave, and then he's going to roam. But no, if you do something weird, and yes, maybe you have to sacrifice 6 minions mid, but you do a lane gank bot, or maybe you bush camp somewhere randomly, maybe you tempo base for a roam on the other side of the map, whatever it is, make an inefficient play when you're desperate. The mind, you guys can be creative if you actually have that intention. Trust me, you guys can always figure out ways. The great ones off the top of my head are bush camps and lane ganks. Very, or literally just not going straight to lane, going straight to somewhere, maybe going straight to the enemy jungle. Whatever the play may be. Very important. Next one, use R for lane pressure. So if you are behind in a game, rather than holding on to your ultimate, maybe just use your ultimate to get a tempo reset. Use your ultimate to get the wave out. Use your ultimate to get a good trade so you can prevent the enemy from roaming. Use your ultimate just to establish a bit of vision in the river, so then your jungler can set up a gank. Or you can set up a gank for your jungler on the mid laner. So for example, maybe you're playing Victor. A lot of the time you'll see Victors or Oriannas just ult the wave or ult the enemy to take a really good trade when behind. Same for Annie. I spoke about that in my Annie guide. Same for Syndra. Rather than, you're not going to get the perfect solo kill with your ultimate anyway. Just use it. By the time you use it, and you would have used it otherwise, it's probably going to be up anyway. Very great way to minimize win from behind as well. And this one here as well. Give and process more information when behind. When you are behind, you should give more information and process more information, because you should be so desperate looking for that one little window. You should be timing flashes, assessing how heavy the sides are trading, assessing possible trades and objective. If they're going to go for Rifteld, give it. We'll go Dragon or dive bot. Look for any proactive call. It's more the mindset, less the specifics. I want you to be desperate for information to make some crazy play rather than slowly lose. I know about you guys, but I hate slowly losing. That's what I'm trying to really stop you guys from doing. Now, I wanted to do a whole separate slide on this because I talk about this a lot in all my videos. I talk about walking the tightrope. And some people have been confused about, like, Curtis, what does that actually mean? What does walking the tightrope actually mean? So, just like this picture on the right-hand side, this woman here is literally walking a tightrope. If she leans too far to the right, she falls off, she fails. If she leans too far to the left, she falls off and she fails. So either way, she needs to be walking that tightrope in order to be successful in that endeavor. It's the exact same in League of Legends. If you lean too far to the left or you're too aggressive, a lot of the time you're going to die to gank, get solo killed, maybe play the game too fast paced, put yourself in sticky situations and probably fail. On the other side, you lean too far to the right, you're too defensive. Maybe you allow the enemy to roam. They roam and blow up the game. You're playing too slow. The game's played too fast for you. You're not trading when you're not setting up enough ganks. You're missing opportunities. Either way, you're not maximizing the chances of winning that game or being successful in that endeavor. So just breaking it down quickly, if you're too aggressive, what does that look like? Maybe you're heavy trading when the jungle isn't there. Maybe you're pushing when your jungle is resetting or full clearing. Maybe you're not rationing out your resources. You're playing the game way too fast. You're just like the TF before in that VOD that we covered before. You're following roams with low resources. You're trading summoners for no reason. You're trading ultimates for no reason. You're pushing without wards. These sorts of things. Very aggressive gameplay, which in some situations is great, as long as you're understanding the context of the situation. Conversely, you may be too defensive. You're not trading when your jungle's nearby. You're not pushing your limits even though you have vision. You're not abusing those CD windows. Very, very important. This is a massive one I see in all elos. You're staying on full resources for no reason, even though you could be trading and creating a form of advantage. You're not following roams even though you have vision. You're not looking for 2v2s even when you're ahead. You're not looking for aggressive invades in the jungle. You're not leaning to the side where the next objective is. You're not calling objectives. Playing too defensive. So when you're behind especially, you got to be on point by walking this tightrope and know, how aggressive do I need to be? And a lot of the time people aren't willing to walk the tightrope because they're scared of losing LP. But this is the way you learn League of Legends. You push your limits. You have to be willing to walk that tightrope. Otherwise, you're going to sit in your elo for a very long time. Very, very bad. Now, to end it off, I believe this is the last slide. We're going to talk about must avoid mistakes. First one, guys. There is a difference between compensating and calculated risk, okay? As I said before, that game where the Cassio versus Zed, he went for a very aggressive 1v1 play. And yes, he messed up micro-wise, but I'm assuming that's a calculated risk. He's willing to make that risky play because the game was probably boomed anyway. But compensating, on the other hand, is when it's uncalculated risk. It's, well, I'm just doing this because I'm autopiloting or because I feel bad. But in reality, objectively, I actually don't really care if he roams. Because a lot of the time, if your bot lane is looking like they're full HP, you're versing like an Orianna, who cares if they roams? Even if you're versing a Zed, but it's a pre-level 6 Zed, and you feel bad that you have to follow a roam or whatever, and you're compensating, you die in the river. But if you looked at it objectively, you couldn't do anything. You can only do your job, and you just compensated. There's no need to take that risk. Even if he goes into river, you can ping him off. The bot lane's trading fine. Chill. So there's a difference, even though this is a bit confusing, there is a difference between calculated risk and just compensating for the sake of it. Also, farming like a madman from behind is a viable strategy for coming back into the game for most champions. This is because enemy lane, and I talk about this in my Orianna guide, the hibernation mode. This is because enemy laners will get more progressively sloppy and less efficient over time. You won't see people really know how to push their leads until, like, I would say, like Master Plus or Grandmaster Plus. A lot of the time before that, they will actually be even more, they'll be inefficient. They'll be more inefficient the bigger the lead grows. So they'll feel like they don't need to farm jungle camps. They'll skip waves for plays. that sort of thing. That is why if you farm really, really well from behind, you can generally get back into the game a lot of the time, especially when you scale well and the enemy can't roam well. The next one is failing to adopt the carry mindset, especially when playing a scaling mage. If you're playing a champion like Ori, Victor, and Cassiopeia, you is an inherent bargain made at the start of that game. Okay, this is the bargain. You made an agreement with your team, essentially a hidden agreement. Hey guys, I'm gonna shake. We're shaking hands right now. We're agreeing that yes, I'm not really gonna have much pressure, and maybe I won't be able to roam or help you at all in the early portion of the game. But I promise, when I do get this item, I'm gonna make up for it on the back end. Right? That's the agreement. You're gonna make up for it on the back end. If you don't have the carry mindset and are not willing to make that agree, follow through with that agreement, you're not willing to, I can't roam. That's fine. I'm not going to roam, but I promise you, I will go ham once I get my Lost Chapter or once I get my Ludens or get my full Hex Core upgrade, whatever item it is. I will pay you guys on the back end. I will carry you guys. And again, I'm doing my duty by being as strong as possible. I can only do my job. I'm not going to play Victor like Talon. I'm not going to play Orianna like Talia. That's just not. That's going to be a detriment to everyone. I would rather just accept reality. I'm being the carry. I'm not going to be able to help you, but I will be strong. I will be in a position to carry you later in the future. You got to have that carry mindset. You got to understand that deal. It's the bargain. That's the deal you agree to when picking those champions. Lastly, avoid the one gear defense mentality. This one's hilarious. I say it all the time. When people are behind, they go full defense mode, full turtle mode. They go back into their shell. They miss opportunities to thin the wave with auto attacks. They miss abusing those CD windows. They just think that they can't do anything, even though they just died once. It's like, dude, you died once. Okay, you're full HP. Chill. You don't have to sit under tower all the time and just catch CS and give a ridiculous amount of pressure. If they use their abilities on the wave, you can walk up thin way in advance. You can actually maybe trade back a little bit if they're missing their abilities. If they don't have their ultimate, you can actually maybe even win trades. Again, just because you die once doesn't necessarily mean you need to go full defense mode. Again, it's more of a mentality thing. And again, I guess this kind of ties into the walking the tightrope analogy. So thanks for watching, guys. I know this was a lot of theory in here. I'm not sure. Hopefully you guys can take away at least 1 point from this video that can help you with playing from behind. This one took me a while to make. I did a lot of research. Hopefully you guys found it useful. I'm actually in the process of moving out right now. That's why my video making has actually slowed down a little bit. I just got accepted into my new place. Hopefully once that's all sorted, I'll be back up running, pumping out my guys, doing as many videos as possible, giving back to you guys in the community. Thank you so much for the support. Cheers, guys.